It is now time to wrap up our micro game. We are going to add a heads-up display to display the health of our character, our bot, and its current ammo, and as well as the frags of all the robots. So what we're going to do, we are going to jump back to our default layout. I am going to turn off the visibility of the navigation map because I don't want it to interfere. And I'm going to go under properties and scene, and I'm going to add a new render layer that I'm going to drag and drop over right before our result. I am going to enable it and open it up. I'm going to call it HUD, H-U-D, and I'm going to go up here and select the render target to be our heads-up display. I'm going to reset under scene the actual 3D cursor to be around 0, 0, zero that out. And now I am going to push H to return back home. And I am going to start by creating a new camera. So I'm going to go under Object, Add to Render Layer, a new camera. And this time we're going to set it to be the type orthographic. So we are going to place it somewhere around, let's say 5 here. And we're going to set that the actual under camera properties, that the actual clip start will be -5 and all the way to down 10. That should give us a good range to start playing with. And we are going to leave that to a screen ratio. It is not ideal, but it's a quick and dirty way to do heads-up display that will fit on every screen that have a proportional aspect ratio. So we're going to start by creating a new script. We are going to go under MicroBots, and we are going to double click here and create a new directory that we're going to call heads up display. I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to go under asset and new script because I'm going to need to enable alpha blending while drawing because these textures have alpha. We want to see through them. So I'm going to type it in and create the asset called HUD. I'm going to create a onDraw function and onDisplay to set my graphic state and then restore them shortly after. Create that. With my camera selected, I'm going to first rename it to be clear HUD and add a new thread, open it up, drag and drop my newly created HUD script. And I'm going to go under my coding layout and bring that up. I'm going to go under MicroBots and HUD. And I'm going to add on function draw the following code that is going to clear my set a graphic, a clear color. And I am going to clear my color buffer, then enable blending. Make sure that the blending function is blend source alpha and blend 1 minus source alpha to really bring the color in and get rid of the alpha itself. And I'm going to disable the depth mask since I am not going to write depth. I'm just going to simply draw and overwrite on screen. On display will be to restore my blend state and my depth mask state. So GFX disable blending and enable back depth mask. I'm going to build that. So we are all set. Now we are going to go back to our default layout, Alt and left. And we're going to create a new texture that is going to a new attachment to actually draw our heads up display. So I'm going to go under my library and asset, new texture and attachment. I'm going to call it HUD as well. And the internal format will be RGBA because we got alpha, and I'm going to leave that to the default. And with my camera selected, my camera property selected, I'm going to enable render to texture and simply drag and drop my new attachment right here. So we are almost good to go. So if we are now going to connect our camera under scene and render layer, we're going to connect our camera to our render layer here. And just like that, we can see that the clear color I've updated means that we have a good connection. And I'm going to push space bar, and we can see that now my texture become blank. It means that I'm actually updating it. Now what we're going to do, we're going to start by bringing in our asset. So I'm going to go under asset and import. And one last time in our MicroBot directory, I'm going to look for the, if I display the preview here, our item ammo, our item health, and our crosshair. So I am going to hold shift, select crosshair, item ammo, and item health, and open that up. I am going to batch import, make sure that they are both, all of them are going to be clamped to edge. And I am going to enable linear bitmap linear to have smoother edges. So I'm going to create that. I got my textures that are imported, and I'm going to get started by adding a new quad right here. I believe that the sandbox already have one. So I'm going to go bring it up under sandbox and mesh. And I believe that is the glyph. I got a quad here. Yes. So I'm going to drag and drop that here. And I am now going to go back on my HUD and create a new material and new shader to handle this specific item here. So I am going to go under asset, and I am going to create a new material that I'm going to call HUD, that I'm going to reuse, HUD please. And I'm going to reuse it for my item health ammo and crosshair. So I got my HUD material. I'm going to create a new shader as well, new shader fragment that I'm going to call HUD also, and just like that. And right now I'm going to call this one crosshair, actually crosshair. And I'm going to go under material properties, and I'm going to edit that one. So I'm going to drag and drop it here. The shader will be HUD, and add a new sampler of the type texture. And I'm going to drag and drop my crosshair here. And now I'm going to edit the actual code. I'm going to switch to shaded, and I'm going to edit the code of my HUD shader. So I'm going to go back under coding, my HUD shader. And what I'm looking for is actually to pass the texture coordinate. So attribute medium p vector 2, and it's going to be texture coordinate 0. And I'm going to as well create a varying to pass it over to my fragment shader. So vector 2 and text coord 0 in lowercase. So text coord 0 lowercase equal to text coord 0 uppercase. And I'm going to copy this here and push shift and tab to enter edit mode for my fragment shader. I'm going to paste that here, and I'm going to also need, if we are bringing in our crosshair here, I have only one texture, so I am going to add a new uniform of the type sampler 2D, and it's going to be sampler at slot 0. So this is basically done. All I want to do here is do something simple. Texture 2D sampler 0, text coord 0, and I'm going to build that. And if we go back on our default layout, I should be able, when I select my HUD and display, to actually see that texture. Not yet. I am going to go back under my object here, open up the HUD render layer and assign that material. Properties, open the static mesh and drag and drop my crosshair, and I should be able to see it. So if I update my texture, my HUD, I can see that it is now updated. And the next step will be to use that HUD attachment and blend it, mix it with our final result. So we're going to do that right now. Go back into the coding layout and bring up the result material here. And we have our depth of field, which is our final composition before being drawn on screen. I'm going to add a new sampler of the type texture, and under library, MicroBots HUD, I am going to display texture and drag and drop my HUD attachment to that texture slot, drag and drop. And I'm going to do a quick editing of my result shader here. So I'm going to go under result, open it up, and I'm going to add a new sampler here. That is going to be sampler 1 for our HUD texture. I'm going to drag all the way down, and what I want is to mix my current result with my HUD. So vector 4, and I'm going to call it HUD equal to texture 2D sampler 1 and text coordinate 0. And I'm going to change the code here by adding a mix. Result is already RGB. And I'm going to add HUD.RGB and HUD, and it's going to be mixed by HUD.A. So I'm going to push build, and right away I can see that I got my crosshair that is right in the center of the screen. I am going to now go back to my default layout and probably adjust it a bit because it's pretty big. First, I'm going to adjust the zoom of the camera that have not been touched. I'm going to set that somewhere in the range of, let's see, 17.5. And with that in place, I'm still going to resize this guy here, which is way too big. And before resizing it, I am going to duplicate it for my health and ammo. So a quick Shift and D here before I assign the actual scale. And I'm going to select it back here. And I'm going to put a scale of, let's say 0.75 on the X and 0.75 on the Y. And let's see how it looks like by going full screen. That's about right. We don't want it to be too big. That's pretty big here. So what we're going to do now, simply create the duplicate of the crosshair material and link the item ammo and health. So I am going to create a duplicate of that, and I'm going to call health here, and I'm going to go under properties and material, drag and drop my health material, and I'm going to this time connect instead of crosshair. I am going to connect my health here, and I am now going to assign to this guy that is going to use the material health. So right away I should see the change. So this is how it's going to look like, and I am going to duplicate it again. For ammo, Shift and D, move it at the other side temporarily, and I'm going to create a duplicate of health. Then I'm going to call ammo, and I'm going to open up ammo for editing, drag and drop ammo, and I'm going to change for the item health texture to be the item ammo texture. And last bit is with this guy selected, With this guy selected, I'm going to go under static mesh properties and assign that this guy will use the ammo material. So we got pretty much everything that is set up. Now we are going to bring in our text, and after that we're going to do some overall adjustment. So for one final time this time, we are going to go under asset and import and back in our MicroBots directory and select the null-shock bold.ttf, open that up. And I am going to put that the texture size is like 512 by 512. And I'm going to try to get as much texture space as possible. I'm actually looking for only numbers and uppercase and lowercase letters. So I'm going to drag the ASCII start to be right before 0. So we got 0 and leave one other for space, and we're going to have the padding, let's set it to 8, and I want to have all the way down to Z. So I'm going to drag that down here to have my uppercase and lowercase. The font size is way too big. Let's drag that down a bit. Let's put that aside, zoom it in, zoom it out, and I'm going to adjust here to only end up with Z. So it should be 75, 76. 75 is Z, so 76. And increase our font size to make sure that it exploit as much as possible texture space. And another one, and that's it. So 74, that's going to be it. If we put it 75, it's going out of the texture. So we are going to create that. And now we have our font. Let's add some text. I am going to double click here and just to have an overall point where I'm going to put my new text. So I'm going to go under object, add to render layer, and this time the type text. I am going to go under properties and text. I am going to connect my font, and for my material, I don't have it yet. I am going to create a duplicate of health here, and let's call it font. And I'm going to have to create a duplicate of the Hud Shader as well, because I'm not going to do the exact same thing. I also want to pass a color. So I am going to create a duplicate of that and call it font. I'm going to open up the font material for editing, drag and drop here. And for the shader, I'm going to want to have my font shader. And for the texture, I am going to drag and drop my font. And back into coding to do a little bit of editing. So with my font shader selected, Shift and Tab to enter the fragment shader code, and I am going to add a new uniform in my fragment shader that is going to be uniform vector 4, and let's call it the base color here. And what I want to do is I'm only interested to analyze which pixel is visible and which one is not. So I'm only going to need the alpha of that texture. So I'm going to do float alpha equal to texture to the sampler 0 and text coord 0. I could have just copied that below, but whatever. The one below here, and I'm going to store the alpha here, and all I want to do is base color multiplied by alpha. I am going to build that, and if we go back in our default layout here, let's start to actually draw some text. So we are going to drag and drop our font material to the font material here, and let's say that I'm going to put 999 here, and if we go back a little, it should be there. It's pretty big right now. So we're going to select it. We're going to go under object properties, and we are going to start by creating a new member variable to be able to change the color of this text. So add variable color. I am going to open up the variable settings, base color, same name as our uniform, specify that it will be passed as uniform, confirm. And now if I drag the color picker, I can see that it's changing. So basically what I want is to create that I'm going to have some shadow. So this one will be all black, and I'm going to scale it right now. Let's say something like 0.03 to get started, and 0.03 here. That's about right. And I'm going to zoom that in, and I'm going to drag it over there. And what I want is to have another one that it's on top. This is my shadow, and I'm going to call this one txt health, and I'm going to create the duplicate, shift and D. I'm going to drag the Z to be slightly over and access this new one variable and set the text to be fully white. And now if I push 1 to go on top view, I am going to use my manipulator and holding shift to give it a slight offset. So like that, we can have the illusion that there is shadow. So this guy here is called text health 0. So I don't want to always move things around. So what I'm going to do, I am going to create a relationship between these two. So like that, when I move the health, everything will move along. So I'm going to select my text health 0, the one on top, hold shift, and then the one at the bottom, Control R. So like that, these two are connected. And then I'm going to repeat the process for the one at the bottom, select the bottom, hold shift, select the health, and push Control R. So like that, they are connected to my health. As I move my health, they all move along together. And later on in script, what we're going to do is we're simply going to create a little helper function that when we are updating the one at the bottom, since our first attachment is also another text, we're going to simply transfer the text that were assigned at the bottom to the one at the top. And like that, that is going to avoid us to repeat the code twice. So I am going to copy the one at the bottom to create a full duplicate of my black and white here for my ammo. So I'm going to select the one at the bottom, the text health, and I'm going to press shift and D, go and press shift and D, and I'm going to drag that over here, somewhere like that. And what I want to do is this time I want this guy, the bottom one, to be connected with my ammo. So Control and R. And like that, when I move my ammo around now, this text will follow. I'm going to rename them. So the one at the bottom would be called text ammo. And just to keep things consistent, let's say that the one at the top is going to be text ammo 0. So one last bit left. We want to have the actual frags of all our bot. So I'm going to create another duplicate of this guy here, and I'm going to shrink it and place it up there. So shift and D. I'm going to drag this one over. If I can select it here, this should do it. And now we have our duplicate, and I'm going to drag and drop that over here. I'm going to remove that relationship. So object and detach selection. And now I have a standalone text. that is probably way too big again. So I am first going to rename it. I'm going to select it and I'm going to call it text frags and enter. To be consistent, the one at the top, text frags 0. And I'm going to scale it down. Since this one was at 0.03, let's scale it down to 0.015, half of it. And that should do it. We can, after that, select them independently and move them. So just to give a overall alignment to see how it's going to look like. And we're going to tweak that later. So now we are basically ready. We are going to go back in our code and go pull our bot controller here. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go under the onUpdate function. And I'm first going to paste the following helper that I was talking about earlier for our text. So it's a simple function that takes a text object and a string, and is going to look for its first attachment. In our case, we're going to update the black one, and the white one will be the actual attachment, and we're going to set the same text. So it's going to be a lot easier for us. So now on the onUpdate function, I am having my health. I'm having the health twice, actually. I am going to remove that code since it's redundant. And also to be consistent, I'm going to move the constraint distance to be here. And I am now going to create another variable for my ammo. I'm going to copy that and paste local variable ammo equal to bot get variable ammo. And now I am ready to draw my text, but I don't want to draw the text below my health condition, because if our player die, he's going to return, so the text will not be updated. I'm going to simply put it up here just after player damage. That should do it. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to copy the following code, text. And we got here what we're going to do. We're going to grab the object text health, and we are going to grab the variable text color, the base color. And if the health is equal to 0, we're going to set that color to red. Instead, we are going to set it to white. And same thing for the ammo. We're going to grab our text, and with that selected, if the base color, if the ammo is 0, we're going to set the base color to red. Instead, it's 1. And we're going to declare a string for all the bots that we have collected on the onStart function here. We are now going to display the frag. So we're going to get the controller out of our bot array. And for each and every bot, we are going to display their frag on screen. And we're going to accumulate that and finally set over the text and make sure that the text is in uppercase, just for a question of formatting. And now all we have to do is to add those frags. So we're going to go under bot controller and spot the line where our robot actually died, which is right here. If health integer equal to 0, it means that we are dead. And we are going to now simply loop through our bot array here and check if the controller name, the one who call the bot controller, which is the one who shoot the other robot, we are now going to increase a frag to this guy here. I'm going to build that, and we are basically ready to go. Let's do a bit of formatting here by moving those health and ammo. So this is how it looked like. Let's raise that a little. Let's put it somewhere around here, and let's copy that and assign that same value to our ammo. And we need a bit more space here. We're going to have like 100. That should be about that. If I reset actually my bot, let's go grab my bot and reset back its ammo. I want to see how much space I'm going to need here. So I'm going to go all the way down. Where's my bot? My bot here, all the way down in this member variable. And I'm going to set health and ammo to be 100 and give it a little bit more space because if it's a big number. So I am going to select it again, enter back edit mode, and just give a little bit more space here. What we can do now, we don't know exactly how the frags will be displayed. So I'm going to save and I'm going to start the game, and I am now going to be able to analyze where is it. And after that, I'm simply going to apply the change. So I am going to push spacebar, and with that selected, go back to my view. I am going to use, I need to select the one at the bottom, sorry, right here. And I am going to move it somewhere in this area here. And I also feel that it is not really well aligned, so I'm going to move, probably because I just move it. Let's do it like this. That is nice. And we are going to go down. I'm going to select the one at the bottom. And then they're hammering me now. And I am going to go down, place it about here. That sounds about right. And if it's the case, let's move our health as well. Make sure that it is aligned. It's just going to look neater. And I'm going to move that over here. And that should be about it. Now, these are over. I'm going to shoot. You shoot me first. Anyway, so basically, it's still a bit big, I feel. So what was the actual... Oh, and we can see also that since I die, we can see that now our health, and I need to grab my gun as well. So my health is now 0 and my ammo is now 0. And I'm pretty satisfied with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to stop the game, and I am going to go on File and Apply Runtime Change. So like that, all the changes that I've made while the game was running will be applied to my offline result. So I'm going to go on File and save that again. And I believe we have finished our MicroBots game. So I really hope you enjoy. This video. As a bonus, I will also add, on top of all the source code in the MicroBots folder, I will also add the control if you want to use a gamepad, and I will also add the control if you want to use a touch screen like for a mobile device. I really hope you enjoy it and you had a good time. I really also hope that you learn a thing or two about NRG, and now that you are more familiar and can find your way around the editor. Thank you very much for watching.